So you've heard a bit about it. Here's a sort of slightly different take on it. The Street Choirs Festival, which was referenced and shown by Lotte and Calvin's fabulous paper this morning, is a long-standing annual nomadic collectively owned tradition festival. It's hosted by a different participating choir each year, and the definitive story of the Street Choirs movement is told in the extremely excellent, buy it if you haven't yet, book of, hang on, you'll see it in a bit, of Lotte and Calvin's, but for now a potted history will suffice. So as they said, it was born from the street music movement in the early 80s. It used to incorporate both street bands and street choirs, and that continued until 94, we think, when the bands and choirs went in separate directions. And the bands went on to form Raise Your Banners, and the choirs continued to develop the Street Choirs Festival. And I first went to the Street Choir Festival in 98, the year after it was hosted in Morecambe. I can't believe I missed it. The festival was so inspiring that I decided to put a local version on because the blueprint just worked so brilliantly for Brighton and Hove choirs. And See Sound Sing A Cappella Festival was born in '99. We used the street choir format, which is basically a weekend comprising a welcome event, a large street massed sing, choirs busking around the town, an evening concert and Sunday workshops. And we ran See Sound Sing in partnership with Brighton Festival and Zap Productions that Veronica mentioned yesterday, who produced a whole weekend in those days when the funding was still there, called Streets of Brighton. And singers of old remember See Sound Sing fondly in Brighton. I didn't return again to Street Choir Festival until 2007, when it was in Manchester, and the choral power and the political energy of the festival completely reignited my passion. And before the event was over, I committed my choir Hullabaloo, without actually asking them, to host the next one in Brighton in 2008, which was great and a trial by fire. Hullabaloo has been going to the festival ever since, including a fantastic year in Aberystwyth in 2013, hosted by Corgabaeth. And fast forward 10 years to 2018, and Hullabaloo was celebrating our 20th birthday by once again hosting the Street Choirs Festival. And it had got a little bit bigger since the last time we did it. Luckily, so has our seafront. So the festival has a rich history, collective ownership, but we walk a fine line between tradition and innovation. And in the last 10 years, it's expanded to include community choirs, as well as choirs who identify overtly as political with a capital P. And to paraphrase Calvin, we are, as a community, we're constantly exploring those persistent tensions of identity and content, such as community choir versus street choir, and pop song versus socialist anthem. And a lot of the time I find that the more kind of implied and covert messages stronger than the overt. So one year we sang, we introduced a song saying, this is our interpretation of the wrongs of capitalism, and then sung Price Tag by Jessie J. So, sadly, but perhaps inevitably, there does seem to have been developed a bit of a them and us situation. And as our comrade and colleague, Janet Russell, who you might have seen conducting the mass sing in Martin and Eileen's film, she says, it's always a bit of a tug of war between the more political choirs and the ones who prefer to keep their politics softer, for want of a better word. She goes on to say that there is a strong argument to say that the radical act of singing together on the streets is a political act in itself. And keeping people singing, gathering together, being collective is the first step and the biggest one in being active to support one another and to recognise inequality. So when it came to me taking up the mantle of musical director, no pressure, for Street Choirs 2018, there was much to consider. My main jobs were to plan the workshops and to choose and book the workshop leaders, to liaise and book the several musical acts that intersperse the choral concerts, but my biggest job was to choose the songs for the mass sing. And as you can see, it was quite a big event. And it felt like pretty high stakes. There were several elements to consider. Firstly, I had to choose a set of songs that would speak to as many people as possible, not only to the 1,000-singer-strong choir, but also to the audience on the Brighton seafront. And you can't quite see them, all of them there. Secondly, the set needed enough musical challenge for some, but to be the songs to be as immediately accessible to others. Thirdly, the songs had to be relevant enough to be considered political, but generic enough to be kind of non-partisan. Fourthly, I felt it was essential to reaffirm the festival's foundations within the radical song tradition. It was quite a tricky balance. Lastly, I wanted to showcase some of the fabulous choral composers in our network. We've got a massive core repertoire of stuff that we've been singing and reinventing and reimagining for years, but we've got loads of really great composers in our network. And I chose songs by composers whose work and ethos I think is simpatico to the political message of the festival. And because they are also all MDs of participating choirs, I invited them to join me in a co-conducting pod to conduct the whole mass sing together. And as far as I know, that's a festival first, and it felt like a really kind of conscious, egalitarian decision. I wanted to connect the songs with their composers, visibly, audibly, and publicly. And who better to conduct a song but its composer? There was 5 of us. We became known as the Pentatonia. And it was a bold move. I'm so pleased that they all agreed, and I think it gave a lot to everyone's experience. We 5 had each other's backs, literally, and it was incredibly helpful to navigate the tricky logistics of conducting 1,000 voices. So these are the songs I chose. These are the people that wrote them. The festival's theme was Citizens of the World. There's always a theme. That's another paper. And I settled on a 7-song set. And the songs and composers I chose were Citizen Shanty by Boff Wally, who you'll see second in, of Chumbawamba fame, and MD of Commoners Choir in Leeds, which is a sea shanty based on the traditional Roll the Old Chariot Along melody. When the Sun Rises, if you saw the film earlier, you'll have seen a lot more of Penny Stone, the incredible being that is Penny Stone. So she wrote a beautiful song which is based on a Cuban proverb, when the sun rises, it rises for everyone. And it features verses in Zulu, Arabic, Spanish and English. Nasty by Val Regan, who is MD for Sheffield's LGBTQ choir Out Aloud. And Val wrote Nasty as a response to Trump calling Hillary Clinton that nasty woman. And So We Rise by Ali Burns, who's one of the most loved and sung composers in the Natural Voice Network, and who writes modern anthems of hope. And Rise Like Lions, which I wrote based on the poem The Mask of Shelley, which commemorates the Peterloo massacre, so which is quite timely. And features the phrase, "Ye are many, they are few," which then, after I wrote the song, of course, it was adapted and adopted by the Labour Party as the phrase. Oh, that's the other side of it. Okay. Hullabaloo chosen 2 charities, and one of them is called Audio Active, a local charity supporting young people making music, digital music. And the other one was Music in Detention, which I want to talk a bit more about. A charity whose community musicians work with refugees and asylum seekers within immigration removal centres. And they have a body of music that's been written in the Immigration Removal Centre, the IRC workshops that they offered for us to use. And I chose a song called Human, and it was written during a 2-day workshop in the Verne, which is the newest IRC, UK's newest IRC. And the song included a rap, so we were talking about tensions and tradition. And so you can imagine the controversy in the street choirs community, people thinking that there was a rap about to happen. We invited a local rapper, another festival first, called Marshall Mandiangu, who gave the rap a bit of his own twist and threw a bit of moonwalking into the bargain. And the final song, as tradition dictates, was Billy Bragg's reworking of the Internationale. Quite like Ballybriggs. There's a canon of songs that the Street Choirs Network considers to be our core repertoire, and this is considered to be our anthem by many. That's also another paper. Here's a wee video. I hope this is the right order of things. So that's just me showing off, sorry. And there's Lotta. And there's all this stuff going on here. Here we go. So you'll see just snippets of 3 songs. It's not a professional video. It's somebody's partner that was just walking around. The last one you'll hear is. I'll talk about it when we get there. Okay, I'm guessing that it's this little play button.
Yeah. Good luck.
I can't get it.
very seriously to
I mentioned she's my MP.
and not only is the festival a chance to celebrate, I think it's an opportunity to showcase the force for good that music is, and the catalyst for change that it can be. We have 39 choirs represented here. Shout the name of your choir now.
Should get all of them. This is Human, this is Marshall Mandiango. First beatbox moment in street choirs. And there was 3 different podia that had the different conductors on it. This is some shanty. This is Mark Wyatt from Commoners Choir. The partner of that person was taking this video. Just so you can see the other side, this is what all the singers saw. You'll hear the altos and sopranos. There's a slight screech alert. You can hear it move to the soprano. So that's what we did. Calvin's very kindly remarked that I managed to bridge the gap between political choirs and community choirs by focusing on a fresh politics of everyday struggles and the music of those struggles rather than the stolid socialist anthems, perhaps. That any good director will freely admit that we are only ever as good as our team. The Hullabaloo Street Choir's crew comprised about 30 people, split into different subgroups. Most elements of the festival planning went really well, but it felt like we were making really conscious, non-hierarchical choices, from the high-stakes decisions like what charities to support, to providing information about what cafes would refill singers' water bottles. We had a common treasury of collective experience from previous festivals and extensive local knowledge that was pulled together, of course. It was our community functioning at its best, and I think that was reflected in the festival. However, we knew we wouldn't be able to totally satisfy everybody. Paradoxical feedback from the festival included, that was the most politically relevant festival in years, and we feel that Street Choirs is no longer a political festival. Back to the kind of perpetual push-pull tension in our community. In my song choices for the Mass Sing, and indeed throughout the choices through the whole group, we tried to find the counterpoint within these tensions. So here I'm going to quote Kelvin again. Thanks, Kelvin, for all these quotes. To honour the past, to engage with contemporary issues, and to look hopefully towards a brighter future.